Hello and welcome to another HTML5 tutorial. My name is Tom from wizardtutorial.com, and today we're going to talk about the HTML5 Q element. The Q element represents a quote. So you might be saying, well, I just watched a couple tutorials back, you talked about block quote, why do we have two different quotes? Now, the block quote is if you're referencing a quote from someone online or they have an online presence, or the quote's online. The Q element is referencing a quote that doesn't have an online presence, or you made the quote, or someone at your company made the quote, something like that. All right, it used to mean short quotes was the Q element, and long quotes was the block quote. Now, that's no longer true in HTML5, and I mean, you could probably use both of them, but the proper way to use them is block quote is referencing a source online, and the Q element is not referencing something online. But I'm going to show you something in a few minutes that will just blow your mind. You'd be even more confused. So let's take a look at the syntax first. It's opening caret, Q, closing caret. And that's the opening tag, and then closing tag is opening caret / Q, closing caret. That is the syntax of the Q element for quotes. Alright, now let's do an example. Let's make it like a real website here and put it inside p tags. And I'm going to quote myself. I love learning HTML5, and I'll say Tom at Wizard Tutorial. So there's our quote. Pretty simple, right? Now, let me refresh my browser here, slide it over for you, and there we go. I love learning HTML5. And it's by Tom at Wizard Tutorial. I almost said .com. I'm so used to saying that. All right, so what happened here? I didn't put quotes in there. I don't see any quotes in there. Well, browsers have default CSS. With Q, you get a default CSS to your code. Alright? If you remember, the block quote kind of like brought the quote out here, but it didn't have the quotation marks around it. Alright, so let's look at a difference between that and a block quote. I'm just going to copy this whole line here. We're just going to change the Q's to block quote. Alright, save it, refresh, and we look at it here. This is the Q element, this is how it looks, and this is the block quote. That's how that looks. Alright, so they both have default CSS styling to them. So, since we're talking about the Q element, let's look at the styling for the Q element. We'll get rid of this one here. And up in our head section, now you don't have to put this. This is just the default. I just want to show you what the CSS looks like so you understand what's going on. We haven't talked about CSS yet, but we'll get there eventually. Q and Q display inline. So you see when we did the Q, I didn't delete my browser here. Display inline, right here. It's going to display everything inline. All right. Here, this one is block quote is display block, so it's going to show this element, and then it's going to break and go down here. All right. So, where was I? Oh yeah, written CSS for this. So the basic CSS is display inline, and then we're going to do Q before. And this is going to be content. Man, I have fat fingers today. Open quote, and then down here is Q after content close quote. And that's where we get are quotes that are not showing up here because it's styled in CSS. So the before goes here, the after goes here. So that's the default in most browsers right here, okay? So that's where that's coming from. We haven't seen this often where it's adding content from the back end, but that's how it works, alright? You can always override it by changing the CSS. So when we get the CSS, hopefully in a couple weeks here, we'll be able to look at this closely. If you have any questions about the Q element, please leave a message on YouTube or on our website at wizardtutorial.com, and do not forget to subscribe. We'll see you in the next tutorial. Have a nice day.